Windshields are hard. Car companies didn't even figure out how to make them anything but flat for 30 years, and it was another 20 before curved windshields were widespread. Compound curve windshields that curve in two directions took even longer. If you follow this channel, you know that I tried to make a compound curve windshield out of polycarbonate a few weeks ago, and all I managed to do was turbocharge my oven. I did also make 2 pieces of useless plastic trash, but I'm back to try again, this time with a little more knowledge, a simpler windshield design, and only a little bit of fire. I've been talking about ground news for a while now, and I've had some friends and family members ask me if it's really worth it, and here's what I say. If you're trying to find out what's actually happening in the world, if you're frustrated with all the bias and noise and you want to get to the core of any story, then it's well worth it. Ground News analyzes almost 50,000 news sources every day and distills it down in a way that makes it much easier to get the actual story. That's the benefit. Take a look at this story on a standoff between Elon Musk and a judge in Brazil. It has 65 sources, with 43% coming from the right and only 24% leaning left. It has a pretty good balance of independent news sources at 25% and media conglomerates at 20%. You can look at the headlines and immediately see that the left-leaning sources tend to focus on Musk and his reaction, while the right-leaning sources focus on the judge's freezing of the assets of Musk's otherwise unrelated company. We all tend to get our news from sources that lean one way or the other, our own little bubble. The best way to look outside of that is with Blind Spot. This feature can help you break out of your echo chamber by showing you stories disproportionately reported by one side. I don't usually enjoy reading the news because so much of it is noise and bias. Ground News is, I think, the best tool for cutting through the bias. Go to ground.news/superfastmatt to subscribe through my link for 40% off unlimited access with their Vantage plan, the same plan I use. By subscribing, you are directly supporting an independent platform on a mission to restore facts, transparency, and trust in the news. The windshield we're trying to make today is for a race car, and since race car organizations don't like shattered glass covering the race course, we are required to make this out of polycarbonate. There are a few ways to form polycarbonate into complex shapes. Last time we tried drape forming, which is where you heat up a flat sheet until it's kind of melty and then drape it onto a mold. This looks easy when the professionals do it, but they have some equipment and knowledge and talent that I don't have. So mine came out looking like a funhouse mirror. There are easier ways to form plastic, and that is to take a mold, screw the windshield down onto the mold, and then heat up the whole thing in the oven. This only really works if you have a simple curve, meaning the curve is only in one direction, otherwise you won't be able to get the polycarbonate screwed down to the mold beforehand. So I redesigned my windshield to be a simple curve, a ruled surface as it is called. This will cost me about 2.5 miles per hour according to the CFD analysis, but it has the added benefit of being manufacturable, which is nice. The other design is also manufacturable, but not by me apparently. It will cost me over $1,000 to have somebody else make it, but if I do it myself, I can spend twice as much money building a dodgy foam oven in my garden. I don't know why, but my mind didn't believe that this is a ruled surface that can be shaped with just a flat piece curved one way, so I printed a mini windshield mold and a paper windshield and tried it, and it's good. Unfortunately, I cannot make a windshield with a tiny 3D printed mold or even a large 3D printed mold because of the temperatures involved, so I will make one out of wood, specifically MDF. I did this in layers because you can't buy a foot-thick sheet of MDF, and also because my CNC router only has a cutting height of 5 inches. Instead of gluing the layers together, I just use screws because glue likes to stop working at high temperatures, and this is definitely getting up to high temperatures. Previously, I used a turbocharger to get air to circulate around the oven. I didn't use it this time because it was annoying to have the vacuum running for an hour, but mostly because the heat distribution in the oven seemed to be fine. The old fan liked to switch on and off and also reverse directions periodically, so I replaced it with one that is always on, so we'll get a little better airflow that way. I was worried about the windshield warping locally around the screw hole, so I printed out some little pieces of plastic to spread the load out. I wanted to use plastic since it's soft and presumably won't gouge the windshield like washers might. This turned out to be a not excellent idea as some of the plastic stuck to the windshield. I did get it all off with minor blemishing, but I probably should have seen this coming. The windshield was a bit bent, but not enough, so I tried again with some longer metal spacers to hold down the perimeter of the windshield, at least on the mostly flat parts. I didn't get anything to hold down the front curved part. And this worked really well. It curved the polycarbonate into a windshield shape, and you can see out of it without any distortions. I have made a windshield. We're done. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Oh, wait a minute. We're not done. We're not done at all. The front of the windshield is a little wavy, the plastic bent up between the parts where the screws held it to the mold. This is no good, but we can fix this by adding twice as many holes. For the next windshield, I printed out a template to get the holes in the right place, drilled them, and recooked the windshield. And it did the same thing, but closer together. I should have maybe made a negative mold to clamp down the front part. 3D print would be easy, but as we just learned, that's a bad idea. I could CNC a new strip of MDF to clamp down, or make a high-temperature fiberglass clamp. But I decided to go with send, cut, send. I had them cut me out some flat windshield patterns and also some strips of aluminum that I can bend around the front to hold it down nice and even-like. This one came out great, even at the front, holds its shape pretty well, got it right on the 5th try. There was a bit of charring on the back of the mold, and I did notice during this baking that the temperature at the front of the oven was lower than the rear. Actually, the bottom of the oven was noticeably lower than the top, which you'd expect with heat rising, but it was surprising since the oven is less than a foot tall. This is exactly why I turbocharged the oven to begin with. But I do have an extra fan motor, so I bought a new blade and added the fan to the side of the oven using a bracket I made from other parts of the oven. It was not particularly well balanced. The oven was starting to show some wear, which is not surprising since it's just been sitting in my garden in the sun for over a month. The seams are coming apart, the top is starting to crack and dip. This is probably why the temperature is not even, because the heat is escaping. I can tell the oven is not sealing as well as it used to since a stiff breeze will cause the temperature to drop, and since it's taking longer to get the whole thing up to temperature. I have the temperature probe in the middle of the oven near the top, so that part of the oven is targeting 370 degrees Fahrenheit. Lexan is not very thermally conductive, so this could be a problem. If it was aluminum, it wouldn't really matter if there was a temperature gradient in the oven, since aluminum would just spread the heat around itself, but Lexan has low thermal conductivity. The MDF has a lot of thermal mass, so it's probably helping to spread hot spots, and the two fans are of course helping. While we were waiting for the oven to get up to temperature, we started working on the actual canopy. This is the part that the windshield will bolt into. I made this pretty much exactly the same way as the other fiberglass parts. I made a plug, then laid up fiberglass on the outside, then some peel ply to give a nice outer surface finish. We got the cut line for the back of the canopy by lining up the engine cover that will be butting up against it. The plan here is to make the canopy and then cut out the window where the windshield goes. Then I can put a windshield in place and we can lay down a fiberglass perimeter on the inside to get the flange that the windshield can bolt to. Anyway, halfway through laying down the fiberglass for the canopy, we noticed something out of the back window of the garage. Smoke. We noticed smoke. Because the oven was on fire. The MDF windshield mold, more specifically, was smoldering. A lot. Since I am a YouTuber, my first reaction was to tell Dave to get the camera, and then he asked if I also wanted the fire extinguisher, which I suppose is a good thing to get. We ripped the lid off and hosed it down. I assume this had to do with the fact that the oven is not well sealed. The middle of the oven where the temperature probe is sitting at is 300 degrees, but the front of the oven, nearer to the heating coil, is over 450. Hot air is just leaking out all the cracks, so we had a crispy mold and a slightly crispy windshield, although this one might be good enough to use in making the perimeter of the canopy that holds the windshield. Might have to cut these corners off and 3D print new ones, but I might be able to make this work for something. Either way, I decided that the oven was done for. It had been sitting in my garden, decaying in the sunlight, the rain, and the temperature cycles. It was time to go in the trash. But then I remembered I had 3 more windshield blanks sitting around, so I decided to try one more time. But this time, I made the oven smaller. I cut down the 4 sides to get rid of the crispy burnt edges and make it slightly smaller. This should help with even heating too, keeping the oven more of an even temperature. So we screwed down the next windshield blank, closed it all up, and let it, oh god, it's on fire again. Yep, this oven is toast. It is time to get rid of it. But I do have 2 more blanks, so let's try one more time. This time I set up the mold with the face of the windshield pointing toward the heating element. I had it turned the other way before because I didn't want radiant heat on the Lexan, I just wanted hot air. But this way I think I can do a slightly lower temperature because the part of the windshield that needs the heat will get it, and the part that doesn't, the back corners, won't. I taped it all back together, carefully sealing the edges was not happening. The whole thing was warped like a taco. High temperature tape gave way to gaffer tape, and then orange duct tape. Probably should have added the turbocharger back in here, but I'm feeling lucky. I don't know why I'm feeling lucky. Luck has not been on my side the last few weeks. This time I decided to ramp it up slowly. The PID controller has a delay. When my Fluke thermocouple says it's 300, the PID still says it's 200, so it overshoots, which is exactly what a PID controller is not supposed to do. In any case, I set the temperature to half of what I wanted and waited for the PID controller to catch up, then increased it by 10 degrees at a time, all while waiting for the display on the controller to match the thermocouple. I also stood there, staring it down, drinking my morning coffee and just waiting for it to give me a reason to throw it all in the dumpster. Randomly, my fan stopped working. Then I remembered there's a door switch that only allows the fan to run when the door is closed, and it was pretty much melted off, so I had to wedge in some metal to get the oven to think the door was closed. This one got a little too hot at the front. This part here doesn't matter since I'll be cutting that off, but the layer lines from the MDF mold printed through on the very bottom. This was a problem on the previous one that got too hot. The mold is not great. Every time I run it through the oven, it gets worse, spreading apart at the seams. I maybe should have added glue along with the screws for extra measure. Also, it's been on fire, so this thing is definitely going in the trash with the oven. Right after we do one more windshield. This is the last blank I have, and the oven could not be more ready to die. I am running out of types of tape, and it is getting really weird looking. St. Francis is displeased. The windshield, however, came out great. I ran this one at about 345 degrees, about 25 degrees cooler than the last one. It worked well, except that you can tell it didn't get hot all the way to the back since the front is holding its shape, but the back is still springy. It's fine though. The canopy will hold this little bit of springiness down. It did take some prying to get it off the mold, and the mold is pretty much toast. Definitely cannot do another windshield, and the foam oven died like 3 weeks ago. But I do still have that one windshield that has the wavy front end. I could put that back in and try to get it not wavy. Probably not a great idea, but this whole thing is a bad idea, so let's keep going. I didn't get crazy with the temperature here because I'd rather have a slightly wavy windshield than an unusable one. After just 15 minutes at 340, I gently opened the oven to remove the windshield. It is still slightly wavy at the front, but it's better, and it still works as a windshield. If I do need to make more windshields in the future, I will need the mold, so I'm going to store that somewhere safe. And there it is. I have a good windshield, and also 2 spare windshields for when this one gets scratched or cracked. And also I have that one that's messed up, but good enough to use as a mold to get the perimeter flange in the canopy. And also I have 4 pieces of plastic trash. Actually, a lot of trash. So there you go. If you want to make a windshield, just do what I did, but do it better. Actually, I will probably have to do this again sometime in the future, and I'll probably watch this video to remember what not to do, but in an effort to be a total bro to Future Matt, I'm going to talk about how it should be done next time. Hi, Future Matt. It's me, Past Matt. Sorry about all the times I was a total dick to you. I know I do that a lot. I got my own stuff going on. I can't be looking out for you all the time. Anyway, windshield making. Here's what to do. Build yourself an oven box just like before, but instead of attaching it to an actual oven, just put a heating coil in there, probably from a stove. One of these guys, maybe 2 of them, but put it inside of a sheet metal tube with a metal fan blade blowing at it and the fan motor outside of the box, and use a pretty stout fan motor. We want to move a lot of air. Then add a wall of foam inside the oven, separating it out from the actual windshield mold. Put the temperature sensor for the PID controller at the back of the windshield. This way, hopefully, you'll get nothing but hot air blasting the windshield. No radiant heat, no hot spots, just a lot of circulating air around at roughly the same temperature. As for present Matt, I am actually done with this oven. For real this time. But it has been good to me, so I will take care of it. If you watched my last video on my journey through Colorado on my adventure motorcycle, you know that I am slightly handicapped right now. This means that the last few things that need to happen to get the race car ready for Bonneville in a couple of weeks are just not going to happen. So this project will remain unfinished for a little while longer. I know you're all shocked that I didn't complete a project that never happens, but it will get finished. And with another year, we have plenty of time to shove it under a table and forget it exists until a few weeks before the race, when we roll it back out and frantically try to get it finished just in time. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.